Hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about the Eurotunnel reward. This is the second review of the spy knife I've been doing. The first was the beginner, so I hope you enjoy this. Let's talk about the Eurotunnel reward in greater depth. So this is a spy knife, and as I said before, and its first stat is its silent killer attribute, which means that when you kill someone, they do not emit a noise, and the body fades away very quickly. On spy, this is actually really useful, because the silent killer attribute means that in an unorganized game, for example in a pub, you can backstab someone and their teammates won't necessarily notice this easily because of the lack of communication between those servers. The knife has one other upside, which is the signature upside if you like, and that is that on backstab you disguise very quickly as your target. And this disguise is actually so rapid that the sentry does not have time to lock onto you in the time it takes to disguise. These two stats together alone make this ideal for taking out a highly defended sentry net, because you can simply get in, stab the engineer, and you don't have to stab the sentry immediately afterwards, because you're disguised as the engineer and the sentry won't notice you. But this is where things start to fall down, because this is where we move on to the downsides, and the downsides are harsh, because obviously this is a very good knife. Now it's moved on through several iterations, this knife, and I believe in the pre-Jungle Inferno version of this knife, you could actually not disguise at all when you're using it. Now it's slightly less severe, but your disguising is still penalized, so you can only disguise when your cloak meter is full, and all of your cloak meter is consumed in the process of disguising. That is, disguising normally. Disguising through the backstab does not consume any cloak. So you can see what this weapon is designed to be used for. It's designed to reward you for getting stabs, and if you don't get stabs, then you won't have a disguise, which will make it more difficult for you to sneak in undetected. This is a really interesting concept, but it does have one other downside, which is the fact that your cloak drains faster while using it. This makes the knife ideal for getting chain stabs, because let's say you stab one person, let's say you stab an engineer and there's a soldier in front of him. You might stab the NG, and then the soldier will look around and see that the NG is still behind him. Obviously it's you disguised as the engineer, but he doesn't know that. And he'll think, yeah, well that seems about right, because the NG was behind me, I didn't hear the kill sound, so, you know, why would he have any reason to suspect that there's a spy there? But the problem is, some classes are just really slow. Spy is the second fastest class in the game, tied with the medic, with Scout obviously being the fastest. If you stab, say, a soldier, like here, I stab the soldier, and because of the movement penalty of the soldier, I then get headshot. Now the problem with this is, if you stab a spy, a scout, or a medic, or, you know, even a demo or a pyro, you should be fine. But if you stab a heavy, you're just going to be dead meat, because you move so incredibly slowly. Now, you can obviously see the problem with this, but the weapon does come up with one other significant design flaw, which is the fact that as spy you do have to sometimes use your revolver. What if there's a razorback sniper? You might have to finish them off. Let's say they're unawares, you have to shoot them. But you can't shoot them, because if you shoot them you lose your disguise, and then disguising will leave you without cloak, which will leave you vulnerable. So already you can see this weapon has got significant problems with it. But now, I think this weapon isn't entirely useless. It does have its moments, and those moments are specifically when you're taking on engineers and their team, because you can slowly pick people off using the Eternal Rewards for fast disguising to make sure you go in undetected, and you can use an initial disguise while you're in the spawn room to effectively gain a disguise without having to incur the penalty of losing your cloak, because you can just use the resupply locker to recloak. However, in situations where you're against a razorback sniper, or if you're against heavies and soldiers specifically, this knife really falls down, and you'd be better off using a Kniver's kunai, the big gun, or just a stock knife, or anything. So, if I had to describe the Eurotunnel reward in one sentence, it would be a fun, situational, high skill cap side grade to the stock knife that can be useful, especially for getting chain stabs and taking on heavily defended engineer nests. But overall, I will not prefer this to the stock knife, especially when there is teamwork concerned, because it falls down very quickly when someone notices that you've disguised as them, and then they can simply communicate that to their team, and you will just end up dead. So use this in pubs, have fun with it, but don't expect to get much use out of the knife in competitive at all. If you do indeed play Highlander or whatever, I mean, Spy isn't really very used in 6s, is he? So I expect you'll be using him in Highlander if you use him in competitive at all. And yeah, have fun with it. But what if you do want to use this knife full time and you need to know how to use it better? So I have worked out some strategies in the time I've spent using this knife. The first is sometimes you will just have to drop your disguise. Like, don't be afraid to just, if you disguise as heavy or soldier, don't be afraid to just remove your disguise to get your mobility back. If there are no sentries nearby, you'll just shoot you, obviously. And sometimes that is the useful play. If you've got someone else to stab, let's say there's a scoped in sniper near you, you can just stab the sniper and get a sniper disguise, which is better than a heavy disguise. The next tip is, if you do happen to run out of cloak and you don't have a disguise, you will be in big trouble. So if you sometimes have to choose between disguising and having your cloak meter, because obviously disguising will consume your entire cloak meter, you sometimes have to make that decision and make a call on which is more useful. And I often find that in disorganized casual games, the disguise is actually more useful, because players who are less experienced in casual will be more likely to fall for your disguises than, say, organised competitive players. So, if possible, you would obviously wait for both your disguise and your cloak to be full. However, if you have to make that call and you have to choose between them, then I would say if you're playing against players who are maybe a little bit more unawares or have been falling for stabs more, then feel free to choose the disguise, because again they may be more likely to fall for it than experienced players. Whereas if you're playing against experienced players and you're using, for example, the Deadringer, you may need that to get away, full time, because you could be attacked at any moment. So that's just my take on this. I don't know, it may not be objectively correct or anything like that. You can argue with me if you want. I don't mind. So how does this stack up to other knives? So if you stack this up to, let's say, the stock knife, I'd say this is probably useful in less situations, but that's probably being harsh on the knife, because stock weapons are designed to be useful almost in every situation. But this knife against engineers, I will almost always prefer it over stock, especially if the players are disorganized, as I said. And for getting chain stabs, I still prefer the big unorganized kunai for that, but if you do wish to use this knife for getting chain stabs, I would encourage you to go ahead, and I would definitely recommend it over stock if your opponents are unlikely to communicate who are your disguised as to each other. So that's been my take on the Eurotunnel reward, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.